and revitalized Serbia's role internationally. Mr. Tadic encouraged the development of business within Serbia and promoted regional trade within the Balkans under his presidency. Serbia's partnership with the United States, Russia, China, and EU member states were strategically improved. In 2007, Mr. Tadic made an official apology to Croatia for any crimes committed on Serbia's part during the war with Croatia in the early 1990s. Boris Tadic's presidency brought Serbia closer to membership in the European Union. I now give the podium to Mr. Tadic. Please welcome Mr. Boris Tadic.
Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, this is a really great honor to have a second time opportunity to deliver my speech or thoughts on Bengali Forum, and especially in this beautiful country, Bangladesh, which is facing with challenges like every country in the world nowadays, but specifically Bangladesh because of geostrategical position, because of the new trends in the global arena, because many specific challenges we are facing with together, and finally, because of potential of this country. You have a huge population, you have a very young population, and every country in the world, in accordance with the scientific researches, has the same distribution of the intelligence. Every country has 5% very intelligent people, 2% geniuses, which means 200 million people. You have a lot of very talented people. You have a much better possibilities and the chances for the future to develop your own country if you are managing that resource, human resource, in a proper way. This is up to your government and your elite. Dear friends, today is obvious that the new world order will be established as a consequence of the series of interconnected regional wars. This is not about war in Ukraine. This is about today, new war, or I hope very limited war in Israel. But that was frozen conflict that can explode every day. A few weeks ago, we had such conflict in Serbia, in Serbian province Kosovo. Maybe you've heard about that. That was very short conflict, but that can also explode whenever you want. We are talking about potential of the global conflict between the United States and China. But there are so many places all around the world that can be triggered immediately and transformed into violence and war. Wars in Iraq, Syria, Libya, Ukraine, and the new balance of power and the influence in the global economy after the economic boost of China and now India. The confrontation of the great powers in the construction of the global infrastructural economic corridors, the huge influence of high technologies, artificial intelligence, the neuroscience, on the accelerated development and dominance of certain countries, and the creation of the new military alliances. This is an atmosphere in which we are living nowadays. This is an atmosphere which is bringing all of us together to think about potential development of that circumstances. Just 5 years ago, the world looked different, and it was almost impossible to predict this development of global politics. The fateful questions arise as to what the world will look like in 5 years and what will happen in the immediate future that we cannot predict today. A few days ago, I was participating in a forum that was event aside of United Nations General Assembly in New York in a Harvard Club with two prominent Israeli politicians, Tzipi Livni and Ehud Barak. And we talked about global conflicts and potential also about Middle East. No one of us even mentioned conflict that is happening today. Which conflict we are going to witness tomorrow? What is going to be after tomorrow? What is going to be in next 5 years? How the world is going to look like after 5 or 10 years? Nowadays, this is very specific characteristics of the world nowadays. We are living in totally, but totally unpredictable world. What is the duty of science, social and political science? To understand and to predict processes. We are able to do that in physics, in chemistry, in biology, but not in politics. This is a problem, which means we need more expertise in politics. We need more cooperation. But coming back to the period during the COVID influence and the viruses, how the world was looking like in that time, whether we had a cooperation between scientific institutions in order to find a reaction and a medical reaction on crises we've been facing with, or we had a brutal competition. Vaccines. That was looking like a brutal competition, even though the world was in a very dangerous situation. Whole mankind. We don't have to remind ourselves about similar crises that happened at the beginning of the 20th century, when we lost millions and millions of people. This time also we lost a lot of human lives. But we didn't have a cooperation between scientific institutions in India, in China, in the United States, Great Britain, Russia. We had a competition between them. Even after they discovered in a very short period of time vaccines, in the media we had a war against each other. They were attacking on different countries which vaccine is a good, which vaccine is not good. That was kind of competition in terms of international credibility between main powers. But this is bringing all of us in an extremely difficult situation. Are we going to live in the world without viruses? No way. Is it going to happen once again in the future? For sure. Are we prepared better in comparison with the previous time for such a situation? No. Do we have institutions that are cooperating together on solving common problem for the people from Bangladesh, from Serbia, Russia, United States, Mali? No. Do we have a more multilateral cooperation nowadays than before? No. Do we have a more credibility of United Nations than 10, 15, 20 years ago or after the Second World War? No. Do we need more cooperation between countries and specifically in multilateral institutions? Yes. Without such a cooperation, we cannot be able even to prevent and to solve problems we are facing with. In terms of viruses, in terms of conflicts and the wars, in terms of legitimate way of finding solution for the conflicting interests that are also characterizing the world nowadays and the history of the mankind. Dear friends, we are witnessing so many alliances nowadays, which is for some people without political experience, good sign. Alliances, people are cooperating to each other. We can see kind of alliances that are not anymore focused on the traditional conflicting zone. For example, Atlantic area. NATO, you know, is focused on the Atlantic area, NATO. The name is clarifying the focus of the NATO. That was a conflict between the Western world, United States and their alliance, and USSR and their alliance. Nowadays we have a new dimension of that traditional conflict from the Cold War, which is conflict between the United States and their alliance in the NATO and Russia. But in the meantime, even though war in Ukraine is bringing tragic events and so many casualties, and every normal person in the world has to be very sad because of what happened, we have a transformation and transition of conflict not only from the Atlantic area to the Ukraine, but also to the Pacific. Nowadays, we are talking about possible conflict between the United States and China, which can destroy the whole world. This is an extremely dangerous situation, but we are witnessing so many alliances nowadays. We can talk about Quad, we can talk about AUKUS. We see that nowadays there are some military strategic thinkers are bringing also in that alliance South Korea and other countries, not only Australia, United States, Japan. We can see that after that reaction of China is to make kind of alliance with the Northern Korea and Russia. We see that India is at the same time trying to handle that situation in a proper way, being in some alliances with one type of countries and the specific alliances in the economic sphere, in the BRICS and in the Quad at the same time. And that situation is, to me, very similar to the situation we've been facing with before Second World War. Maybe we are living in the world, in the room where the young people are only hearing what we are talking right now. But before Second World War, we've been witnessing so many alliances. Some alliances were created overnight. Some alliances disappeared overnight. But the outcome of that kind of political and social and economic and security atmosphere was the Second World War. I hope that what we are witnessing nowadays is not bringing us in the new World War. But we can be pretty sure that this situation is not normal. This situation is very dangerous, and this situation is a crystal clear evidence that in the world we are facing with a huge challenge and a huge problem. Dear friends, my friend Ziller was asking me to deliver kind of thoughts and speech, 10, 20 minutes. And I wanted only to summarize what we've been talking about in past 24 hours. Because these kind of conferences are very helpful, I think, crucially important regarding the world nowadays. If we are organizing such a conferences in Bangladesh, in India, in other countries, I hope one day in Iran, in Saudi Arabia, in China, we can share views and we can be helpful to our governments and the political structure to implement kind of views and strategic thoughts in terms of preventing problems and preventing conflicts. Otherwise, we are going to be so far from each other. Whenever you are facing with a kind of problems by being far, being yourself farther from the problem, you are going to be attacked by this problem after tomorrow. This is very bad strategy. At the same time, I'm looking at the Western world nowadays, and everyone in the Western world is attacking on Russia because of war in Ukraine. With that I can understand. This is totally acceptable, what Russia is doing right now in Ukraine. But at the same time, I don't see so many people that are thinking what was before conflict started to be reality. Are there some reasons for such reaction of Russia? Which is, from my point of view, nowadays totally unacceptable. But at the same time, in terms of strategical point of view, what is going to be final outcome of that war? Is Russia is going to be closer or farther to the Western world? If Russia is going to be very far from the Western world, Russia is going to be in the hands of China. If China is going to have a Russia in their own hands, what is going to be final outcome of that? China is going to take a totally different geostrategical position, and that can create new problems and new tensions in the world. I think without having strategy to closely cooperate to each other, to have open door for dialogue, for such conferences and political dialogue, we are going to be even more dangerous and more dangerous world in the future. In that respect, I think one of the key issues the world nowadays is facing with is the prevention of conflicts. We have last year I said, we have a Nobel Prize for Peace, you know. Those award is usually for someone who was making peace after war. But we don't have an award for someone who is going to prevent war, which is much more important. Prevention of war is going to save human beings, their lives, tragic destruction. But we have to think about that. This is why I think United Nations is the only multilateral institution in which we can be focused on prevention of war. But we need the political and scientific expertise in prevention of conflicts and war. We have to be able to understand what's going on. We have to understand what about societies, different countries, what about different interests, what about dispute of interest we are facing with in the world nowadays. This is something that I'm insisting on always when I'm participating in different forums. Nowadays in Bangladesh, in Dhaka. A few days ago, I was doing that in New York. A few days ago, before that, I was doing that in Baku, in Azerbaijan, in Beijing. And I think this is extremely important. But I don't see positive outcome of that thoughts. And I don't see that the world, and especially multilateral institutions, are going to be enriched by the people that are able to understand potential conflicts. Nowadays in Dhaka, here we have only few politicians. I'm one of them. Maybe this is good, maybe this is bad. Politicians are also human beings, you know. Without politicians, you cannot solve problems. And not only scientists, diplomats, and the students can analyze situation and can identify the problems we are facing with. Without politicians, we cannot do that. Politicians are also human beings, but with specific characteristics. And I think we have to think about that. This is very, very important. Without influence on politicians, there is no chance to create a better world nowadays. But I think that we have to use every possible forum, like Bengali Forum, and to have such a coordination between different forums from all around the world to create a specific network that can create global influence on politics in different countries. Of course, that I'm not naive. I've been President of Serbia, Minister of Defense, and I perfectly understand what is the role and duty of the politicians when you have to serve to your constitution and your people, your electorate. But at the same time, if you are only focused on that, but not being focused on the global interests, you are not going to be really statesman, and you are not going to deliver something which is necessarily for the human beings and the mankind. You are going to be only specifically focused on only your own country. That kind of attitude and methodology in politics is bringing us to the new conflicts. And this is a problem. You have to have a wider perspective, wider picture. Without that, you cannot be the man who can work on reconciliation, on establishing sustainable peace, and developing of your own country and the neighboring countries and the whole world. This is why I think that such forums are very, very important. And my suggestion to the authorities of these countries to take this into the consideration. This is very, very important. And this is why I would like to thank the organizers, our friends here, because of organizing such event. This is really very brave and very important for the Bangladesh, for the young people, the new generation, and also for the government of this country. This is my message to my colleagues in the government of Bangladesh. My friends, I'm going to finish my thoughts with the challenges I see as a crucial nowadays. After prevention, I see a challenge which is very dangerous, and we can witness that every day. This is the double standards, which is functioning in a global arena almost on the daily basis. I mean, you can see one big power is criticizing the other big power because they are not respecting rules. But this big power didn't respect rules only 10 years ago, such rules, their own rules. This is politics of double standards. United States, you know, I'm coming from Serbia. I mean, I was a member of opposition against Milosevic in 1990s. We've been fighting on the street with the power of Serbia in that time. We were against war, but finally we were bombed by the NATO without permission of Security Council of United Nations. This is not respecting of the rules, the common rules. That was violation of the international law. But at the same time, we've been fighting Milosevic on the streets, but with the NATO on the sky. That was totally unsustainable situation, a very dangerous situation for us. But after that, the Western world was violating also international law by recognizing independence of our province, Kosovo. Why I'm saying this? Because I'm not crying right now, but I'm reminding ourselves. That was the first sentence of Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin on the meeting with Mr. Gutierrez, Secretary General of the United Nations, when he said, after criticism that came from the United Nations because he recognized Lugansk and Donetsk and other provinces of Ukraine as independent entities, and finally he integrated them in the US, in the Russia. He said, if that was possible with the Kosovo in Serbia, this is right now possible with Donetsk and Lugansk in Ukraine. I'm talking about politics of double standards. We have to understand which kind of standards we are implementing nowadays. This is why New World Orders is about not who is going to have supremacy, but who is going to define really standards that are going to be implemented everywhere and that we can respect everywhere, in every point of the earth in the future. This is why New World Orders are one of the most important spheres which have to think together and how to implement that, how to analyze that, and how to make new prevention on possible conflicts. If we are going to have a new world order that are not in accordance with the justice, that are not in accordance with the common interests, we are going to create, to open new Pandora box for the future. And I'm finishing with something which is not very usual in politics. This is technology. Technology is a very, very specific nowadays, because whoever is involved in the technological improvement is aware that technology can be even bigger threat, not something for good, but for bad, for the human beings, than simple politics and political interests. Technology is developing so fast, and sometimes I'm thinking whether technology is going to be out of any control in the future. As a young student of psychology on the Belgrade University in Yugoslavia, in that time we started to work on artificial intelligence. That was in 1970s. Nowadays, we have a very specific outcome of artificial intelligence. We have an impact of artificial intelligence in mobile telephony, in the different science, but also in politics. We are not thinking carefully about influence of artificial intelligence and digitalization. We are not thinking about human beings in that respect carefully. We are simply allowing new technologies to conquer the whole world because we are happy, because we are more able to communicate, we are more able to earn money, but at the same time, this is the other side of such development. I'm finishing with that sentence. Uncontrolled exposure of the young human beings, kids, to the digital information, which is happening every day in every country. Look, young people, looking mobile, being totally impressed. This is kind of hypnosis, but uncontrolled exposure of their brain to the digital information can destroy the parts of their brain, in terms of physiology, in terms of functioning. Empathy that we need is very important regarding solving conflicts and understanding other phenomena in other countries. But empathy is in the dangerous situation regarding that kind of attack coming from the digital information. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your speech. We are enlightened and hope to see you in next year. Now, I'm here to introduce our ministerial speech at the first ministerial speech at the Bay of Bengal Conversation. Today, we are delighted and pleased to welcome a minister from Bangladesh for the first time to the Bay of Bengal Conversation. Last year, we extended invitations to many ministers, and 9 honorable members of the cabinet confirmed. But unfortunately, they didn't show up. Some of them were reached at the hotel gate, but didn't approach to this conference room. Some of our ministers even came to the venue here, but had to leave without delivering their speeches. However, we are fortunate to have the Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh join us last year. This year, we are absolutely thrilled to have one of our own ministers. Mr. M. A. Mannan with us. We would like to express our sincere gratitude and thanks to the minister for being here. Now, I'd like to invite the Planning Minister of Bangladesh and a Member of Parliament, Mr. M. A. Mannan, to please grace us with his speech. Mr. Minister. Thank you so much. Bay of Bengal Conversation. Bay of Bengal Conversation. Former President Saldiar, former Prime Minister Mali, Mr. Mosama. Okay. 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Thank you. Thank you very much, Zillur. Good afternoon. And of course, tons of apologies. I have no excuse actually, but I had a very big excuse because there was a big meeting. I had to attend that, and I could not leave until the VVIP had left. That is the custom here in our country, in mostly other countries also. So, of course, my apologies again and again to you distinguished guests from many countries, from various regions. I would like to express my warm welcome to you to Bangladesh, and I would like to also thank Zillur and his organization for organizing this very, I think, very important event, although I don't know much about the insides of the conference as yet. I haven't had the time to go through the papers. But as it is mentioned, Bay of Bengal, my home, I know it very well, fairly well. It arouses emotions in my mind, Bengal, Bay of Bengal, our bay. It is our bay, Bay of Bengal. And the rising tides, conversation on this. So it must be, it's very relevant to us in Bangladesh. The rising tides are something for you gentlemen and ladies to see and to be able to express your feelings and your what you know about these rising tides. For us in Bangladesh, for me personally, we feel that this increasing interest, attention to our region, not only from immediate neighborhood but beyond, this is something excites us. This is very pleasing. For decades, for centuries, even the second millennium as a whole, I can say, we had been in a kind of a stupor, backyard to a larger, bigger entity, India. But then India itself was in a kind of stupor, in a different situation altogether, being colonized, being occupied in so many ways. And since we were at that time part of the greater Indian subcontinent, we had been part of the same, want to say good or bad, that's a different matter for the historians to decide, for that miserable period of 1,000 years altogether, I should say. That's my personal feeling. So having come out of that millennia, miserable millennia for Bangladesh, we have achieved our independence in 1971, and we have achieved in a very different way compared to our neighbors. Our neighbors negotiated their independence. Big neighbor India, including Pakistan, Sri Lanka, but we were not part of the negotiation. We are part of the deal. So we had a very bad deal, we thought. So we fought a liberation war of our own, split from the system that we were part of in Pakistan. And really, in this whole region, we are one entity, one state, or one nation, which earned its own independence through blood and toil, through battles, through sacrifices. So why I say this, not to express my anger or anything, just to put things in the context, that Bangladesh is a different kind of a country than the other countries of the region. Because we fought, died in millions, and we were able to reach independence. And we had very big goals also. Our liberation war was fought by under the leadership of our great father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and his cohorts, millions of people. We had very clear, definite goals. Of the many goals, 4 were outstanding goals, declared goals. One was, of course, among many, one was to liberate the people out of poverty, to be able to manage a better standard of living for the millions, and to be able to join the march of humanity. That was one major goal of the 4 goals that our founding fathers had enunciated for our liberation war. So we are in that phase as yet. We achieved independence in 1971, but we had our periods of ups and downs since then. The father of the nation was killed within 3.5 years, along with his family members. A very miserable episode, a very miserable time in our national history. There have been periods of military rule, altogether about 2 decades of rule by our own military. And then after a lot of struggle, domestically, our political party which fought the liberation war, Bangladesh Awami League, finally could come back into the stage, and its present leader, my Prime Minister, our Prime Minister, under her leadership, Sheikh Hasina's leadership, we are pursuing a major goal. Number 1 goal is to achieve economic emancipation, economic justice, a better living for our millions. So in that struggle, or in that battle, or in that the big goal that we pursue, we want friends. Our declared goal is to have friendship with all our neighbors, and declared goal is malice toward none. We don't want to pick up fights with anybody in the world. We want to be left in peace, allowed to work our ways, and allowed to be able to cultivate our talents, whatever we have, and come out of the economic misery that we were until yesterday. I can proudly say that maybe tentative though, we have been able to turn around and make some move forward in the last 1.5 decades, particularly during which President Prime Minister has been at the helm of the affairs. I had the good fortune of being with her as a member of parliament. This is my third term. And as a cabinet minister in the last 5 years. Prior to that, a junior minister in the previous cabinet. So I can say with confidence that if two things are required now, to know our neighborhood, to know our potentialities, to know what our Bay of Bengal is, to know what our rivers are, to know what our coastlines are, to know who our neighbors are. That's the immediate requirement. And in that light, these sort of conferences, Bay of Bengal Conversation, you are talking about Bay of Bengal and in the immediate neighborhood, principally us, I would say, in this meeting. The new spotlight that has been shed on us, and you're discussing various aspects of that, that new spotlight that is turned on us. So I, as a member of the cabinet, as a member of the ruling party in Bangladesh, we appreciate, we think it's a very useful academic study. We would like to, at least if we can't share with you in direct work, at least to be able to listen to you and to learn from your conversations and use those, what we learn in our work, particularly in my work specifically. For some of you, this may be a little, I have to explain what is planning in Bangladesh. For some of my friends from the Western countries, planning is not a very friendly word, not a very relevant word in their context. But in our context, it's a very relevant word. Why? We started in 72, 71 with nothing in hand, devastated, war-torn, economically backward, as I have said. There was hardly any private sector in our country, like many were in the Western countries who were on their own contributing to the economy. In Bengal or Bangladesh, our Bangladesh, there was no private sector at all to be mentioned. Whatever private sector was in the hands of entrepreneurs from the other wing of Pakistan. So we were purely an agrarian economy, hardly any infrastructure, rivers and rivulets, coastlines, forests, Sundarbans, and we had no private sector, as I said, and very little government sector. So in that light, plus our founding fathers were excited, enthused by then many global ideas of socialism, ideas of being fair to everyone, ideas of taking over all the national wealth together and trying to build up. So in that light, the planning commission or the planning ministry was one of the first things that our founding fathers created in Bangladesh. So initial chair was the father of the nation himself, our father of the nation. And then since then, times have passed, much water has flown down our rivers, our Padma, our Ganges, our Brahmaputra. And there have been changes in our political situation also. As I mentioned, there have been periods of military rule the globally also the scenario changed a lot. Soviet collapse, ideas of pristine and glorious ideas of social equality was put on the back burner. There was more emphasis given on creating wealth. More emphasis was given to create wealth and to be able to work so that some sort of living conditions can be created in the for the rural masses who can come out of poverty. So poverty, elimination, eradication, reduction became one major goal, and idea of the all wealth being taken by the state and being invested that idea went on the backside. We adopted a free market policy, rather because we had no choice, we had to do it. The global situation had changed, as I said. And our present government, we are committed to free market philosophy. We have promoted, we have helped a private sector of our own to come up and make their contributions. I can say there are many important people from my country also who are very well-informed people. Our private sector is very vibrant, very big, and as of now, in terms of money, in terms of values, about 80% of our national wealth is in the hands of the private sector. But one major catch, major infrastructure, roads and bridges and rails, the private sector could not do it. They don't have the means for doing anything there. So we had to do that. Healthcare, of whatever standard, minimal standard to middle standard, private sector had no immediate incentive to invest in the health sector. So we had to move in there with our resources, very minimal resources. Literacy, I'm not talking about education as yet. Literacy as such, we are hardly 20–25% of our people were literate in 1971 when we became independent. So we had to adopt policies, take programs to promote literacy so that, well, I don't have to explain why it is necessary. So these major areas, literacy or education, healthcare, infrastructure, again, power, electricity, these were the areas that our government had to move in because private sector could not come there because of lack of their own resources and their motives for coming there were not strong enough. So how did you do it? We don't have much resources of our own. We don't have oil and gas. We don't even have intellectual power. People who are semi-literate. Technologically, we are quite way down. So we started borrowing from international organizations, the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, Islamic Development Bank, and we borrowed also from government to government directly. So by borrowing and by investing in our agriculture, SME sector, small and medium industry sector, we were trying to switch on latent energies in our economy so that they could come out and make contributions. But again, I would say that number one area that we had to look in and very correctly was infrastructure. It's a riverine country, as you know, hundreds of rivers are here. We can't move very easily from one district to another. So we started building roads and bridges, not of global standard as yet, but at least we could wade through or we could drive our small vehicles through. So infrastructure was given very, very high priority. And electricity. This government of Sheikh Hasina, to her credit, I would say, everyone agrees, when she took over in 2009, for the second time, 2009, hardly 25% of the rural population had access to electricity. In a country where 80% people live in the rural areas. She declared that we shall have electricity by 2021, by whatever means. She took some very courageous stand, some very risky stand, and we were able to reach wires, grid lines, sub-grid lines to every home in Bangladesh. That's a big, big achievement. I take pride personally. Most of these homesteads are lying around in various places of country. So that achievement is something that has switched a lot of latent energy in our people. And we gave attention to agriculture also, which was our mainstay. More than 50% of the labor were engaged in agriculture. And for food security, it was number one item. So we researched, We put in money for agriculture research. We went for fertilizers, irrigation, insecticides, and in other ways. And 2009, when we were short of food, critically short of food, now we are just about equal to our present requirements. We produce about 40 million tons of cereal grains of various kinds, principally rice. And we can say with pride, this is the first time in our history of 1,000 years, we are able to feed everyone with our own grown resources. I said tentative because not much is left, just about. So if there's a big disaster, something happens, either by human fault or by something natural order or ordained, we can again fall below. But that is a fact. We know about it and we are making efforts. Just today, this morning, we are talking about this very matter from where I'm coming. We have to raise our agriculture to a higher level than what it is now. And our government is putting a lot of attention on that. And of course, our main target still remains, as a group, the rural population, 75 to 80%. They are the people who fought the liberation war, made huge contributions, had very little of their own. They still remain in the villages, many of them outlying, no roads to their village. Electricity has gone, now we have to build roads. We are building roads feverishly. Quality is not global, not even regional, I would say. Let me be truthful about it. But we have put out roads almost to every village. Earthen roads. We have built earthen roads, which now we'll have to go and make paved roads in due course. So this is just to share with you some of the difficulties that we face, the difficulties which doesn't necessarily make us scared. We are not frightened. We are confronting these face to face, and of course with help from friends from all over the world, particularly the IGOs, intergovernmental organizations like the World Bank, ADB. I must mention again and again, we have borrowed. These are not dole-outs. Let me be very honest about it. We are a heavily indebted country at this moment, but we are also at the same time able to say that we are paying off our debt of the past on a regular basis. We have never defaulted. We hope this critical time that is at this moment, global situation is not very friendly. Ukraine war, which has almost become a permanent feature, it seems now, for the last 2 years. And there are some other new developments. One just now going around in the Middle East in the last 2-3 days. So these things does create problems for us. But with friends like you and others beyond, and learning from you, from your discussions, from conversations like this, we are able to pick up ideas, but not necessarily orders, not necessarily do this or don't do that. We listen, we cook it in our own kitchen, in our own way, and with our own experience, which you can't match anyone from outside. We are sons of the soil or daughters of the soil. We mix up our learnings from you, and we draw plans and programs for our people. That is the place where I work personally. I'm the Minister for Planning. We have 5-year plans. Besides 5-year plans, we also pursue some global plans, like SDGs, you know very well. It's a global, UN-adopted SDG plans. So we blend both the plans, our own 5-year plans, SDGs. There is no contradiction. Both are for the welfare of human beings, and we pursue both together. We hope by 2031, we will be able to sit strongly in the middle income group. We are at the bottom of the middle income group now. We are not LDC as of today. By 26, we will be completely in the middle income group. By 31, our position in the middle income group will be consolidated. And our vision for 2041, another 18 years from now, 19 years from now, we want to reach what is called developed country. I tell you what is called because I have to explain that in detail. Many of you know. even now materially developed, better drinking water, better sanitation, better literacy, tolerably good roads, fairly good health care. These are the things we want to achieve by 2041. I think we are confident we are right on track. But again, I'm just sharing with you, we're right on track, but we have to do much more. And in our efforts toward doing more will require, as I said, your support and your friendship, and we have to learn from you. So Zilul, I want to thank you for this opportunity, and once again apologies for being late. Thank you. Jai Bangla.
So thank you so much, Mr. Minister, for your time. We're very much delighted and very much pleased to have you in this conversation. So ladies and gentlemen, now, after the speeches from the Minister and the former President of Serbia, we will proceed with our regular plenary session. Our next session will focus on the topic of ASEAN centrality, the caught in the tug-of-war between the West and the East. Mr. Munshi Faiz Ahmed, the former Bangladesh ambassador to China, will be moderating this session. Our esteemed speakers for this session are Haji Haris bin Usman, the Brunei High Commissioner in Bangladesh; Aryo Bimo Utoma, Assistant Professor, Department of International Relations, Indonesia; Beck Starting, Associate Professor, La Trobe University, Brunei, Australia; Satoru Nagao, Fellow Non-Resident, Hudson Institute of Japan; Sutukon Konkyo, Advisor, KBU Research Institute, Thailand. I kindly request the moderator and all the speakers to please come to the stage and for their insightful remarks. Thank you. So, Mr. Moderator.
Good afternoon, everybody. As you can see, I'm Munshi Faiz Ahmed, supposed to be the moderator today. And after such exciting speech from the planning minister, and just previous to that, President Mr. Tadic, we might be a little monotonous in this discussion. I hope not, but it could be. So you have to make special efforts to stay awake. You have seen that we are starting at 15:26, that's 3:26, and I understand that we'll have at least an hour and 20 minutes for us. Of that time, I'll try to give the presenters, the speakers, 10 minutes each, which is about 50 minutes. And my interjections might take another 10 minutes from time to time. And then we'll have 10 minutes for question and answer. That's how we plan to have this session. And as you have all seen, the present session is ASEAN centrality and the tug-of-war between the East and the West and the East. It's a very exciting topic in many ways. And it can create all kinds of, tension, because it talks about the tension between the East and West. But this conference, I understand, is about promoting peace. And Bangladesh is about promoting peace. Bangladesh talks about, the minister mentioned, friendship with all and malice to none. And Bangladesh has been for 2 decades now been pursuing a resolution at the UN on a culture of peace. And many countries have been co-sponsors, and it is adopted every year unanimously. But I think a conference like this provides us an opportunity to take it out to everybody and see if we can really move this program of culture of peace forward, so that everybody, all countries, start pursuing a culture of peace within their countries and domestically, as well as internationally, in the international arena, as in our relationship with our friends. And since we say friendship with all and malice to none, so we do not want to see anybody as an enemy. Of course, there are people who are not very friendly at a particular given time. Our efforts will be to make them friends as well. So with those words, I'd like to pose a few questions for our speakers so that we can try to elicit a few answers from them on those issues, and then leave it to them. One is, of course, this question of centrality of ASEAN. That is the main theme of this thing. And ASEAN, there are some 10 countries, and each country has its strengths and weaknesses, but when they come together and they agree on certain things, it has an added force. So we all look up to ASEAN because they have been able to integrate in an exemplary fashion. And in Bangladesh, in South Asia, we have not been able to do something of that kind regionally. And so we look up to them. So we want to learn from ASEAN. And of course, we also want to see ASEAN, with its strength, do more for promoting peace and cooperation. Then this thing about the confrontation between the West and the East. This is, all the speakers earlier have talked about this being the most important challenge for us all. And how do we navigate in this situation? And is there anything that we can do to reduce this tension? Can the conflicting parties come together and work together and cooperate so that we can benefit from both sides? That is the next thing that we would like to hear from our friends. Then when we talk about the East and West, we've been hearing about the South China Sea and all that. So the South China Sea dispute is going to come out to some extent in these discussions. And my question here is, do we hear the right words all the time? You see, if we go back a few years, just before up to 2010, the American position was a little different. They were neutral on this issue. They officially, particularly Ms. Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, officially suggested that America was neutral and wanted the parties to resolve this issue through discussion, mutual discussion. And then there was an effort, there is still an effort at ASEAN to create a code of conduct. There is a temporary or interim code of conduct in place right now, and they are planning to find out a permanent or more detailed code of conduct. So we'll be hoping to hear from our friends and about that code of conduct and how this is coming off, and whether there is anything that ASEAN can do to help bring the various parties together and resolve this issue. And when we talk about the South China Sea disputes, there are territorial disputes between the parties. But nowadays we see a lot of tension created by presence of foreign ships and aircraft in the areas claimed by certain countries. And that creates difficulties. Is it not something that we should be able to try and avoid? Then the other thing that we are all talking about these days is when we have this war in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine, some people are talking about the next war, that this war is going to end sometimes where does the military industrial complex find its next war to sell their weapons, make new weapons and all that. And some people are suggesting that it's Taiwan, that there's going to be the ground is being prepared to go to war over Taiwan. If that is so, how do we prevent that? That is something we need to talk about. Here, I think one thing that comes to mind is that it was also mentioned by President Tadic a little earlier, that countries, everybody who has diplomatic relations with China, officially agree and commit to one China policy, or that Taiwan and Tibet are integral parts of China. And USA has signed 3 agreements with China on this. But then at the same time, America has enacted the Taiwan Act. And then they're trying to regularly strengthen Taiwan militarily and all, and provoking confrontation on the 2 sides of the Taiwan Strait. This is a kind of hypocrisy. And how do we get out of this situation? That is something maybe some of our speakers might address. So with those words, may I now invite our first speaker in this session, High Commissioner Harris. Let me see, let me get the full name. There you go. So, Ambassador Haji Haris bin Uthman, you have the floor, sir. Oh, just by the way, he is the High Commissioner of Bangladesh, sorry, High Commissioner of Brunei to Bangladesh. Sir.
Honorable M.A. Manan, MP, Minister of Planning, distinguished guests, distinguished moderator, esteemed speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you all. First and foremost, I'm grateful to be here today to deliver the opening remarks for this significant Bay of Bengal Conversation hosted by the Center for Governance Studies, CGS, Bangladesh. It is an honor to be part of this esteemed gathering where experts, scholars, and leaders converge to discuss the pressing issues facing our region. The theme of this plenary session, ASEAN Centrality, caught in the tug-of-war between the West and the East, is of paramount importance in the current geopolitical landscape. ASEAN centrality is fundamental principle of ASEAN's foreign policy and has been instrumental in promoting the region's peace, stability, and as we explore how ASEAN nations can act to acquire a mutual beneficial status quo in the Indo-Pacific, it is essential to appreciate the historical journey of ASEAN itself. Born during a time of regional instability in 1967, marked by uncertainty, Cold War tensions, and intense trust deficit among nations, ASEAN initially faced skepticism regarding its ability to foster cooperation and unity among diverse countries. However, the seeds of trust planted by ASEAN founding fathers in 1967 gradually blossomed. ASEAN member states have steadily cultivated trust through dialogue, diplomacy, and the pursuit of shared goals. The ASEAN's journey from a region once marked by a trust deficit has transformed into one grounded in strategic trust. ASEAN centrality, characterized by principles enshrined in the ASEAN Declaration, Bangkok Declaration, 1967, is immersed within the organization. ASEAN centrality embodies mutual respect for the independence and sovereignty of member states, non-interference in internal affairs, peaceful settlement of disputes, the denunciation of the use of force, cooperation and collaboration, adherence to international law and norms, and economic integration. These principles collectively promote peaceful coexistence, diplomatic conflict resolution, and economic cooperation among member states, contributing to regional peace and stability in Southeast Asia. Over the years, ASEAN centrality and ASEAN's incremental achievements have been nothing short of remarkable. As ASEAN gradually grew from 5 to 10 member states, we witnessed, among others, the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation, TAC, in 1976, the establishment of the ASEAN Free Trade Area, AFTA, in 1992, the signing of the ASEAN Charter in 2008, and the crafting of the ASEAN Economic Community, AEC, blueprint in 2015, the ASEAN Strategic Plan 2016-2025, and the ASEAN Community Vision 2025. And there are many others. And over the past 56 years, ASEAN has grown from a small regional organization to a central player in the Indo-Pacific region, if not a significant global player. Today, ASEAN has a combined population of over 680 million people and a combined GDP of over $3 trillion US dollars. ASEAN is also the world's 6th largest economy and is expected to become the 4th largest economy by 2050. Ladies and gentlemen, ASEAN centrality, the notion that ASEAN should be the basis of any regional architecture in the Asia-Pacific, as we understand it now, emerged as a natural progression of its journey. While interpretations may vary among member states, the core principles endures. These principles, however, are now encountering formidable challenges. The rise of China in the South China Sea and the emergence of the quadrilateral security dialogue, often referred to as the Quad, have also introduced new dynamics that have put ASEAN centrality to the test. Amidst these formidable challenges, ASEAN nations find themselves at a crossroads, presented with a spectrum of options. In this regard, I believe all the learned speakers here today and at this juncture will unleash the answers and could build upon ASEAN's storied history of trust building cooperation and strategic trust. The ASEAN Centrality and all of ASEAN's milestones and achievements demonstrates the magnetic appeal of ASEAN and the region's shared commitment to fostering cooperation and dialogue, and are tangible evidence of the dedication of ASEAN nations to regional peace and prosperity. Objectively, ASEAN could continue championing inclusivity and dialogue as they engage with significant players in the Indo-Pacific by maintaining its commitment to open dialogue, economic integration, and the pursuit of shared interests. ASEAN could shape a mutual beneficial status quo in the Indo-Pacific. In conclusion, the concept of ASEAN centrality represents more than a mere principle. It is a call to action. As ASEAN navigates the intricate tapestry of the Indo-Pacific, ASEAN would be capable of doing so with wisdom and adaptability. ASEAN region holds the potential to become a model of cooperation and prosperity, exemplifying the principles of dialogue, diplomacy, and mutual respect. Last but not least, I extend my profound gratitude to the Center for Governance Studies, CGS, for orchestrating this crucial event and allowing me to deliver opening remarks to this significant dialogue. I eagerly anticipate the wisdom and insights from the learned speakers. I hope they will share collectively to shape the future of ASEAN centrality in the Indo-Pacific. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Harris. I think you have explained to us quite well about ASEAN centrality and its purpose of promoting peace and cooperation. Now, next speaker on our list is Professor Aryo Bimo Utomo from the Department of International Relations, University Pembangunan Nasional Veteran Jawa, Timor, Indonesia. So, Professor, please. By the way, you can actually speak from where you are, or if you like, you can speak from the podium.
I can speak from here, sir. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, thank you, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen. First of all, when talking about the ASEAN centrality, we know that centrality itself is a highly contested issue in ASEAN, given that we in ASEAN have this sort of principle called non-interference. We have consensus, but yeah, this sort of principle has provided us with some ASEAN way of preventing conflicts and how to manage the diversity of our region. But at the same time, it also provides some difficulties because yeah, the so-called tug-of-war between the great powers are occurring within the region. And also, we have to pinpoint that ASEAN is naturally positioned as a cornerstone because we have this big economic potential and we have a large population. First of all, disclaimer, yeah, I'm not an expert in security studies, but rather I would like to pinpoint another pathway, another point of view which we can approach the issue of ASEAN centrality, which we can focus on. That is from the lens of city diplomacy, how cities can be an actor, how they can be actors to facilitate the centrality of ASEAN. And let's return to about the centrality of ASEAN. To me, centrality outlines a more important point, that is connectivity and resilience. Because at the very core, when we talk about centrality, it means that we have to prepare our region to be able to stay resilient whatever the challenge is. It still feels like yesterday. 2 years ago, we were still struggling with the COVID-19, and ASEAN was one of the most hardly struck region in the world. In Indonesia myself, I'm from Indonesia. We have millions of people died as the result of the COVID-19, and this is where we should take a lesson that ASEAN should provide some sort of centrality in order to tackle this kind of problem. And moreover, why city diplomacy? Because I regard that international relations, particularly, is now arriving into a new trend. That is, we have to divert our attention from state-to-state affairs to cities. Why cities? Because when we talk about international relations, we usually have this sort of mental map, that the world is divided into approximately 200 or 193 according to the UN countries. But if we look beneath those puzzles, if we look beneath those hundreds of countries, we will find approximately 10,000 of cities connecting with each other, pursuing their own interests, and trying to tackle the problem within their borders. So I think in order to address the issue of centrality in ASEAN, we also need to consider how to approach the centrality, the connectivity through the urban approach. Ladies and gentlemen, Southeast Asia is steadily urbanizing. By 2025, the most population will be urban. Now we are reaching approximately 47%. So 47% of the ASEAN population now live in urban city. We have vibrant cities. I'm from Surabaya, the second largest city in Indonesia. It's like Chittagong for Bangladesh. And we also have cities like Jakarta. We have Bandung, and not to mention, we also have Singapore, one of the largest international hub in the world. We have also Hanoi and Bangkok, and so on and so forth. And I also believe that Southeast Asia is no stranger to the concept of city connectivity. Many big cities are situated there, and when centrality can be translated into resilience, then ASEAN can help its cities and local governments to cope with modern challenges. I would like to quote the former mayor of New York, Michael Bloomberg. In his 2013 speech, he said that when countries talk, cities act. Well, we can take a lesson here that when local government, every day, they are being faced with everyday problems like technological advancement, environmental issues, health resilience, and urban planning. They face this sort of problem every day, and I think this is where ASEAN can work on, because ASEAN itself is not stranger to the concept of city diplomacy. Formerly, we already have ASEAN Smart Cities Network stipulated in 2018, where approximately, if I'm not mistaken, 26 pilot cities engaged in a group to share best practices and to focus on inclusive approach to address issues at the urban level, like sanitation, healthcare, climate change, and also urban planning. And I think ASEAN, in this case, can also provide a platform to encourage the cities to cooperate within the framework, because when we talk about the international relations studies, we now tend to see states as too big for small problems, but at the same time, it is too small for big problems. That's why globalization has bring us to the concept of state transformation, where now states are now being transformed from three ways. First of all, the states are now being fragmented, meaning that the state is not as centralized as it used to be, because they realize that they cannot tackle every problem at once. At the same time, it provides us to the concept of decentralization, meaning that now local governments also need to be given more power in order to address what actually they need in order to address the demands of globalization. But at the same time, I also believe that globalization not only pulls upwards but also downwards, meaning that those local governments also is now being pushed to internationalize, meaning that they need to connect with other cities, with other cities not only within the region but also outside the region. And maybe some of you may have asked, why city connectivity, why city diplomacy when we have this sort of traditional international relations based on state diplomacy? Well, let's go back to the concept of ASEAN centrality. We have this principle of non-interference, and while it is a problem, it offers a fertile ground for us to discuss about city connectivity. First of all, because cities benefit from the gray zone, meaning that they are not necessarily they are not states in the sense of they are not the central government that provide that that has this national interest, but at the same time they also have the power to execute what they really need. And resilience can also mean that resilience also demands more people-to-people engagement. You know, cities consist not good cities consist of civil society which are vibrant and actively engaging in deliberation of policy making. So I think the resilience can also be pushed by providing more platform for more people-to-people engagement. And also I believe that cities, the future international relations will involve more cities to localize issue, meaning that what is domestic is now international, and now vice versa. We cannot separate simply what is domestic and what is international, because those two are so interconnected. And I think what cities should prepare is that, first of all, cities should be aware of their own brand. I mean, they need to be aware of what are their main strengths and what kind of partners they are going to seek from the international cooperation. For instance, I come from Surabaya, and now my city is now focusing on tourism and also focusing as the center of MICE in the Southeast Asian region. So that's why we are now pushing more cooperation on that sort of themes. And also, cities can also provide capacity buildings. Personnel need to belong as a one community, because we already have the concept of ASEAN community, and I think ASEAN should leverage on this as cities now.
Can we try to conclude in a minute, please?
Okay, thank you, sir. So I believe that ASEAN centrality can be served by the involvement of more cities, and ASEAN can encourage more cities to be involved in more networking, because I believe that in the future cities can serve as the connecting hubs for the international networks. Okay, I think that's all for me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Aryo Bimo. And may I now call upon Dr. Beck starting, Associate Professor La Trobe University, Bandura, Australia. Yes, yes, Doctor. No. No,
there we go. We've got it. Thank you so much. And thank you to the Centre for Governance Studies again for inviting me to this excellent dialogue. So I guess I would like to start my comments with a bit of an outsider observation, because I am not from an ASEAN country. You might tell from my accent, I'm from Australia. And so when I think about ASEAN centrality, I come to it from a slightly different view. So I'd like to separate sort of two interrelated, but what I think of as being quite separate concepts. ASEAN consensus on the one hand, so ASEAN working together, the ASEAN way, principles that have already been mentioned, such as non-interference, ASEAN consensus over here, but ASEAN centrality as a slightly different concept, which really talks about ASEAN as an institution and the 10 Southeast Asian countries being able to lead regional institution building. So when I think about ASEAN centrality, the first thing that comes to my head is this idea of ASEAN being at the heart of the regional architecture. So for one of the sort of core questions that I think about in terms of ASEAN centrality is really the extent to which that is true, and the extent to which ASEAN remains the kind of central fulcrum or the central part of particularly East Asian regional architecture, but increasingly as we move to this new regional nomenclature about the Indo-Pacific, to what extent does ASEAN and the bits and pieces of the institutions and organisations around ASEAN really remain at the heart of that institutional architecture as our concept of region really expands across these two vast oceans. So, in some sense, we can say that ASEAN centrality is as much about external powers as it is about the Southeast Asian powers, because this is, and it's a remarkable story really about how other countries in the region and beyond the region how they use the term ASEAN centrality, how when we read documents that are produced by the Quad countries, for example, Japan, United States, Australia and India, how those documents often talk about ASEAN centrality. It's become a commonplace term over the last 20 years when ASEAN began to really emphasise this concept of ASEAN centrality. So there's a certain norm diffusion that has gone on here, where other countries have adopted this norm, this idea of ASEAN being central to the regional architecture. But there's a crucial question here about how much these other countries have actually internalised that norm, how much they have absorbed that norm of ASEAN centrality, or how much they use this term in order to placate ASEAN states, in order to try to ways of signalling to Southeast Asian countries that they still matter, while they go about building new and different forms of security architecture. So I am, as I said before, from Australia, and Australia is interesting, I think, in the context of this discussion, because it is, aside from the United States, the only country that is involved in both the Quad and in AUKUS. And what these arrangements really represent are new forms of minilateralism, strategic minilateralism. And there is a concern, I think, within some quarters of Southeast Asia and other parts of the Indo-Pacific about whether or not this strategic minilateralism is a threat to ASEAN centrality. Now, personally, I think that these forms of arrangements can exist side by side, but that's only if the countries in the Quad and in AUKUS make very real and substantive measures to ensure that ASEAN centrality is not just lip service, but that it is something that it is embedded within this new strategic minilateralism. For the Quad, for example, that really means about making good on the promises around delivering public goods in and beyond Southeast Asia. My concerns around the lip service, I'll give you one example. Australia is a country that is seeking to deepen ties with Southeast Asia across a range of different areas. There are policy initiatives in areas like climate change, maritime security, trade and investment to try to deepen the relationship with ASEAN as an institution, as well as bilaterally within those countries, the 10 countries. But where does it invest? Out of the top 20 countries for Australian foreign direct investment, there's only one Southeast Asian country, and it's Singapore, and it's number 9. Australians are much more likely to invest with the United States and the United Kingdom, with New Zealand and with Canada, what we might group together as the Anglosphere countries. So in my view, when I think about ASEAN centrality, I'm as much concerned about what goes on within ASEAN as an institution as what I am is what goes on with other countries buying into the idea that it is central, continues to be a central part of the regional security architecture. And in one area in particular, our moderator mentioned it at the start, the introduction. I mean, really, these are big questions of what type of regional order is emerging and what type of great power is China seeking to be and the United States seeking to be. There was a mention around US provoking confrontation in the South China Sea, but we can also see that China has been assertive in the South China Sea as well. And if we want to talk about hypocrisy and double standards, which, you know, certainly I'm on board with that, but we need to be taking a close look at what both great powers are doing in that sort of contestation. And that makes it very difficult, I think, for ASEAN, where you have maritime states and continental states with very different interests, trying to come together to solve some of these great dilemmas. The great powers are not making that easy with their own sort of interference. And the Code of Conduct was also mentioned. We know that is still being drafted and negotiated. Even that is not designed to resolve conflicts. It is designed to manage conflicts. So I'm going to end my comments by saying that I am optimistic about ASEAN. I see that there is still a lot of worth in the institution in terms of navigating not just these big sort of grand strategy issues, but also the lower hanging fruit. In my area of maritime security, this is about dealing with things like pollution, it's about dealing with things like plastic, it's about dealing with the quotidian, the day-to-day issues of dealing with maritime crime, IUU fishing, issues of blue economy. These are the areas, I think, where ASEAN can and does and still can continue to play a really important role.
Thank you, Dr. Beck, starting. I think you made some very discerning comments about the issue and certain things that we have not been discussing so far about the intentions, the motives behind using this term, ASEAN Centrality. Very interesting. So let's get to the next speaker, Mr. Satoru Nagao is the fellow, non-resident fellow, Hudson Institute, Japan. So, Mr. Nagao.
Thank you very much. I'm not a government official, so my analysis is personal. So ASEAN Centrality has a positive and negative aspect. So for Japan, ASEAN Centrality has three aspects, I think, based on our strategy, which is Indo-Pacific and Quad. Indo-Pacific and Quad, this concept was introduced when Prime Minister Shinzo Abe addressed in the Indian Parliament. So Indian Ocean region is the place to publish this idea. But this idea has three aspects. First one is both the Pacific side and Indian Ocean side develop very fast pace. That's why this region is developing this region as the influential region. It's been the influential region. So that's why we need a new concept. But second feature is this region is under threat of China. Because around Japan, we can say, 1970s, suddenly China started to claim Senkaku Island as their territory, and now more than 1,000 times China's naval ships try to show the activity around it. So 1,000 times is annual. This means that 365 days means that every day average is more than 3 times. So we need a strategy to deal with threat of China. And thirdly, Indian Ocean region is very important. That's why Japan wants to cooperate. That's why Indo-Pacific and Quad. But view from this strategy, what is ASEAN centrality? View from this, firstly, yes, ASEAN is center of the Indo-Pacific because of this center of the development in this region. That's the first one, positive one. But negative one is, yes, this region could be the arena of the power game. Because we can remember what happened in the US-Soviet competition during the Cold War. That time, Central Europe consisted by Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary. This was the arena of the competition. And this region is surrounded by great powers like the US, the Soviet, and the British, and France. So this ASEAN could be, because ASEAN has the same feature between the US and China, surrounded by Japan, Australia, and India. That's true. And at the same time, to cooperate with India and Australia, ASEAN is the joint point center of Indo-Pacific. That's why view from 3, we can say ASEAN centrality has both positive and negative aspects. So what will happen in this region? It depends on the future of the US-China competition. When we check the history of the United States, which they claimed about 250 years, yes, 250 years ago, United States is just a colony of the British Empire, but now only superpower in the world. But during this process, they compete with many rivals, and all of the rivals hasn't survived, including Japan Empire, Germany, and Soviet Union. So that's why when we see the current US policy and when we see it, the difference between Republican and Democrat, yeah, about the China policy, end of the Obama administration or through the Trump administration, now the Biden administration, there is a consistency. So counter-China strategy is, there is no difference between the Republican and Democrat. So under such kind of situation, we can expect that it will escalate. So currently, no country, including the United States, does not demand the ASEAN country to choose the side. But time will come to choose the side in the future. And in this case, of course, such kind of situation could be the chance to relocate factory in China to the ASEAN country, or the other chances we can find. But at the same time, we should not forget one thing. Winner will get all of the benefit in the competition. So that's why join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Suthik, no, that was Mr. Satoru Nagao. The lighting is rather difficult for me to see things here, but anyways. So thank you very much for your very useful comments. Now we have the next speaker, Mr. Suthikon Kingko, advisor KBU Research Institute, Thailand. Since you are from the ASEAN countries, so I'd try to request you to see if you can also add something here about can ASEAN as a group make greater contribution to promoting peace and cooperation as against confrontation and conflict, particularly in respect of the two countries that we've been mentioning, the two great countries, China and USA. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I have a slide. Sorry, I have to stand here because I have slides so I can see my slide clearly. But anyway, before we start, I think I'm quite honored to be invited as speaker on this topic. And slide, please.
Technology is not always very friendly. So we'll give it a little time.
Okay, that's good.
Good.
Okay, so I have the clicker here. Hopefully it works. Okay, it doesn't work. Okay, it works. Okay,
it works.
Good. Last time, this is Seattle. I'm not sure. Not many of you have been through time of Seattle. It was some times ago, like 50 years ago. I born 6 years after it dissolved. So many of you may born after it dissolved. So last time ASEAN took side, it was during the Cold War and it failed miserably. After US withdrawal from Vietnam, and I think the regions learned from this lesson and create ASEAN's Association of Southeast Asian Nations with focus more on socio-economic cooperation instead of securities. ASEAN was formed to focus largely on socio-economic cooperation and leaving all political conflict behind. This is the key for the success of ASEAN. The conflict, the baggage, leaving it to the past. So we have progressed well, reaching different socio-economic corporations. We create free trade area in 1992 that already mentioned by Honorable Ambassador from Brunei. We became ASEAN communities. We are becoming ASEAN community. We create ASEAN Economic Community in 2015. We have common market, and we are moving toward free movement of goods and service, free movement of labor, and as well as investment. So if we consider ASEAN as a country, we are 5th largest in the world by GDP, by the economic size, the 3rd largest in Asia. There are 3 pillars of ASEAN community that are being formed: ASC, AEC, and ASCC. ASC is ASEAN Political Security Community, AEC is ASEAN Economic Community, and ASCC is ASEAN Socio-Cultural Communities. This is when we are forming ASEAN community, we are start to openly and formally talking about politics and security as one of the 3 pillars of ASEAN community. We did not start from political or security issues, but we start from cooperation on economic and social issues. This is the right time for ASEAN, as it is the rising tensions between US and China in the regions. So the new challenge for ASEAN is the conflict between US and China. Before I outline about what ASEAN should do in these ongoing tensions, I would like to give you an overview of how important both US and China to ASEAN. In 2022, China is the largest export market with 16.4% of ASEAN export going to China, followed closely by the US with 14.9% of ASEAN's export volume. These 2 countries together account for 1/3 of ASEAN export. They are very important to us. In terms of FDI, US contribute 22.5% of inward FDI into ASEAN, while China account for 7.7% of FDI into ASEAN. So they are important to us as well. What does ASEAN think about US and China conflict? With those 2 points in mind, we can see how US and China are important to us, and we cannot easily choose one or another. What about people in ASEAN? What are they thinking about in terms of US and China? I borrowed some data from ASEAN-wide survey conducted by ASEAN Study Center in Singapore. For most influential political and strategic power in Southeast Asia, ASEAN thinks that China is the most influential, followed closely by the US. I think this is maybe because of the close proximity to ASEAN and its status as the largest trading partner of ASEAN. China is the largest trading partner of ASEAN. You can see here, China 41.5 in 2023, and US is 31.9%. Contradictory to that fact, when we ask about the leadership in maintaining rule-based order and upholding international law, China is losing to the US, and even in 2022-23, China even lose its leadership in this aspect to Japan and UK. This may be because the rising tension in South China Sea and the way Chinese is exerting and projecting their power toward their ASEAN neighbors, such as Vietnam and Philippines. So what choice we have? ASEAN choices. What choice ASEAN has? From the survey, luckily, only 6% of ASEANs would prefer us to choose between US and China. So it's only 6%. 18.1% want ASEAN to partner with third party to counter the coming US-China conflict. And this is very soothing to know that 30.5% of ASEAN want to maintain its neutrality, and 45.5% want ASEAN to become more resilient and unity to fend off pressure from US and China. Interestingly, these 2 options The last two options, which emphasize ASEAN centrality and neutrality, together account for 76%. So we are better be neutral. But if we have to choose, actually US won over China, but actually it's a small margins. This is quite indecisive actually. But when we look deeper into each country voting, when we look into each ASEAN member, we can see here that 4 out of 10 members are voting in favor of siding with China, while the rest vote for US. This differing view, no unity approach, I would like to ask the audience whether it is good or bad for ASEAN. Maybe you can raise your hand if you think it's bad for ASEAN. This differing views. If you think it's bad for ASEAN, raise your hand.
Well, it's interactive, so if you want to respond, go ahead. Show your hand.
Sure. Actually, I would like to argue that the difference among ASEAN members we observe here is good for ASEAN. Why it is good? It's good in the sense that non-uniformity creates stabilizing equilibrium, that preventing ASEAN to move against one major power in favor of another major power. Embracing differing views is the backbone for ASEAN centrality and neutrality. So we don't have uniformity, but differing view, no uniformity is good, as there are no decisions to make between siding to one another major powers.
So you need to conclude quickly.
Thank you. The last slide here, I would argue that ASEAN centrality and neutrality is not only good for ASEAN. You can see here, we are in the middle. It's not only good for ASEAN, but also the US and China, as ASEAN is acting as buffer between two major powers. In my concluding remarks, I would say both major powers benefit from existence of buffer mechanism of ASEAN that can provide foundation for exchange of information and pathway for collaborations in the regions, despite the ongoing tension between two major powers. ASEAN is important in offering a trust platform for Indo-Pacific regions to diffuse direct confrontation from the rising tension between US and China. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting analysis. And as we all know, people know better than the governments. So you said, if I'm not wrong, if I saw it right, that the people said that you should stay, not away from both sides, but stay as you are, not siding with any side. And that is the very big majority. Over 80% of the people think that's how it should be. So I think the people have spoken, and they have spoken the truth. It is important for all of us to find ways, ASEAN is a strong force, and the Chinese and the Americans both need ASEAN for whatever interest they have in this region. Therefore, ASEAN definitely has a lot of, what is the word I forget, but you have a lot of purchase on them. And then ASEAN can, at least I feel that ASEAN can exert enough pressure on both sides to encourage them to abandon the path of conflict and confrontation and try to come together more in cooperation and come closer in cooperation and solidarity, working together, so that they can bring greater good to the world, and in the process, all of us who are not as powerful, we can also benefit from their cooperation. If we remember a little bit, if we go back a little bit, say the 20 years from 1990 to 2010, we saw a period of great cooperation among all countries, and almost all countries, not almost, all countries benefited from that cooperation. Some countries benefited a little more or took advantage of it more than the others, but that always happens. but we should not stop that cooperation. We should continue that cooperation and try to make the best of it for all of us. That is how we all make progress. But if we are trying to contain somebody, to stop somebody, we create situations where we go to war or conflicts, and then we actually make the world poorer. That's what we are doing right now. So I think we should take our lessons and try to encourage cooperation and cooperation and friendship among countries, big and small. So now let's take a few questions. We'll have 3 questions. And yes, please come to the mic and speak. Yes, next is you. And then, do we have any ladies asking any questions? Yes, please. So next, you'll be number 3. You'll be number 3. First there.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
May I put my question?
Yes.
I have 2 questions, different. Question 1. How does the panel look at a comparative view of ASEAN having progressed so much and regional organization called SAARC, of which Bangladesh is a member, or almost the fourth thinker, and in which capital of Bangladesh we are sitting and discussing the subject today? How come SAARC is in a very poor state of progress and ASEAN is in a very good state of progress? If they could make any comment as an outsider. And part 2 is, centrality of ASEAN was the subject matter of discussion today. There could be another phrase, marginality of ASEAN. One of the marginalized country, the westernmost country, Myanmar is our border. And we are suffering from Rohingya crisis for last 6 years. How does ASEAN countries or leaders or people look at this subject?
Thank you.
What role could they play? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. So we've got the question. We'll take the answers at the end of all the 3 questions. Next question is from you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the floor. Actually, last month I was in the Asia Pacific Roundtable in Kuala Lumpur, where there were about 400...
We can't hear you properly. Can you please come closer to the mic?
Is it okay?
Let's see.
Is it okay? Hello?
Yes, that's better.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, for giving me the floor. Let me start by saying that I just attended the Asia Pacific Roundtable at Kuala Lumpur last month, and the subject was ASEAN Centrality, the three-day-long session, and I got the impression that ASEAN is in problem. It might get divided. That's the impression I got from that roundtable. There were about 400 delegates from all over the world. I was one
Your
from
question,
Bangladesh.
please.
Yeah, I'm giving the question.
We are short of time.
Yeah, my question is, how do you see the integrity of ASEAN in future, getting divided between China and especially Dr. B from Australia, because of the Quad, AUKUS, and militarism we talked about, and ASEAN security community is not forthcoming. It is basically an economic community. So how do you measure the centrality of this ASEAN? Is it getting fragmented, so to say, because of the COC is not working out? South China Sea is disturbing the scenario. Japan is coming in, and the NATO might come in. And I say again, Quad, AUKUS, and ASEAN doesn't have a hard power as such.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we got your question. The last question is from the lady here.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, for allowing me a question, to ask you a question. My question is, well, partly I accept Australian doctor's comment about the centrality of the ASEAN. I also don't agree that they are fully centrality, playing in this role, and also the neutrality. I also don't think they are fully neutral, because the world's largest catastrophe, humanitarian catastrophe, is Rohingya crisis. And Bangladesh itself is dealing with 10 million Rohingyas in their land. sorry, 1 million, okay, 1 million Rohingyas in Bangladesh. But how come ASEAN is keeping quiet and they are not coming forward to help and show the solidarity with Bangladesh? We don't mean money, we mean the solidarity to solve the problem, because this is a big problem. If we don't have any peace in the region, how we can have the trade, the prosperity in business and other things.
Thank you. Please. Now, the questions, only one question was actually addressed to one of our speakers, but the others are open. So anybody who wants to take the first two questions from Mr. General Ibrahim? Yes, please. If you want to take it, do you? Anybody? Any takers? The first question, that is, why SARC did not succeed while ASEAN did so well? And the next one is ASEAN going to be marginalized?
I can answer the first questions. From my point of view, I think at the start of ASEAN or any corporations, I'm sure there's a huge different, large historical baggage. When we decide to come together, we have two choices. We can just keep focusing on the difference and the historical baggage and cannot move forward. Or we can move forward and create transforming. There's a statement by late Prime Minister of Thailand, who was a seasoned diplomat. He said that it is better to transforming the battleground into a marketplace. So if we do that properly, forget the historical baggage and create mutual benefits to trade, to investment, to socio-economic corporations, then when we think about the cooperation later, when we think about the conflict later, we feel like it's very minimal compared to the benefit we have from the corporations.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Dr. Beck.
Thank you for your question. I have to say I'm a little bit skeptical about when other countries use ASEAN centrality and neutrality as well. And I think in terms of whether or not AUKUS and Quad is marginalising other regional institutions, again, they don't necessarily have to be, but what they symbolise is a sense in which some countries are no longer investing as much in multilateralism. Minilateralism offers, an ad hoc approach to issues. It offers, they're not formalised or institutionalised kind of processes. They can be issue-based if they want them to be. So the countries, including Australia, who have turned towards these other sorts of arrangements clearly see that there is a gap and that multilateralism, existing forms of multilateralism, is not filling that gap that has emerged as a new order emerges. And taking your point about the Rohingya, I mean, this is one particular issue that has been very significant for ASEAN and one that might actually prevent Timor-Leste from ever becoming a full member of ASEAN. So there are a range of issues, I think, that confront ASEAN centrality, and that is an obvious one. Thank you.
I think we've got answers to all the questions directly or indirectly, and I'm being told by the organizers that we have run out of time. So the last thing I want to do is thank all the participants and thank everybody who's present here who have given their kind hearing to us. Thank you, everybody, and we hope that we have all learned something from this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Requesting everyone to come forward for a group photo.
Yes, please.
Dear guests, it's my pleasure to introduce this next session and today's last session, something I have been personally quite excited to do for a while. The title of this session is The View from the Top, Political Leadership in the Modern Age. This panel has only 3 esteemed members. I want to call to the stage former Prime Minister of Mali, Mr. Moussa Mara, former President of Serbia, Mr. Boris Tadic. Both of them are the member of Club de Madrid. As we said before that, Club de Madrid is our organization of the former President and former Prime Minister who are democratically elected. And moderating the session will be my good friend, Ali Aslan, who is an international TV presenter, moderator, public speaker, and journalist. He has worked worldwide for global news network such as CNN, ABC News, Channel News Asia, and Deutsche Welle. This is also his second time at the Bengal Conversation. Gentlemen, please come to the stage, and you begin when you are ready. Please, Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, and my friend Ali Aslan.
I think it should be working indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, very warm welcome to the very last session of day 2. Thank you so much, Zilur, for this very kind introduction. It is indeed my great pleasure to be back here for the second edition, for the second year in a row. Thank you so much, and heartfelt congratulations on what you have built here from scratch throughout the last couple of years. Very impressive indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, now the session, I'm not saying we're leaving the best for last, but I can tell you that this is a session that is going to hold a lot of promise, and a session I'm very much looking forward to, because everything we have talked up until now comes down to one thing and one thing only: good leadership. And this is what we're going to talk about. The view from the top, political leadership in the modern age, is what this session is titled. And indeed, as Zilur has pointed out, we have here with us on stage 2 individuals, 2 gentlemen who have led their countries throughout difficult times, who have proven their leadership, and that's why I'm very much looking forward to hearing from them throughout this session. Former President of Serbia, of course, Boris Tadic, and former Prime Minister of Mali, Moussa Mara. Thank you so much for joining this session. And Boris Tadic, let me start out with you. You've already held a keynote today, one I've listened to very carefully, and one where you have raised a lot of good points. Political leadership in the 21st century, as we see throughout the world, is hard to come by at the end of the day. Everybody's looking for good leadership. Everybody is looking for that one quality that leads their country and their people to the next level. As somebody who's been there, as somebody who has led his country as president, a very simple but probably a very difficult question to answer. What, in your opinion, makes a good leader?
When I was entering in politics, being member of a semi-legal organization in 1970s, I was dreaming to bring democracy Yugoslavia in that time, which wasn't a democratic country. That was a communist country in that time. And I was participating in semi-illegal organization with my friends, and my father, who used to be philosopher and political philosopher, said to me, politics is very interesting, very dangerous, but politics without experience is nothing. And this is first that I would like to share with you. To be politician without experience, okay, this is very challenging for young people, that's nice, but it's very difficult to be a real politician and statesman without experience.
And there's no rehearsal to being president.
Yeah, that's the problem. When I'm remembering one American president when he said that the worst thing with a former president that he knows right now how to be a good president.
And the irony is probably by the end of your term, when you know what it's all about, you're leaving office.
Yes, I can say this. I would be much better right now than I used to be president. Frankly speaking, I was very young. I was 44 years old, and it's too young for such a difficult position and in a difficult region, in a difficult country.
Yes.
And my friend Moussa Mara is facing with similar problems, but he's much younger than me. But anyway, to be a politician, I mean, maybe my background is helping me to define that, Ali, in a good way. My background is psychology, and I'm always thinking about politics from the different angles. I'm not politician in the classical form, and I'm always thinking about society. I'm not thinking about power, but at the same time, to be a politician, you have to qualify yourself by winning on elections, to bring yourself to the power, and to have responsibility and in accordance with the Constitution, kind of instruments in your hands to make changes within society, to improve your society, which is, in general, something which is defining good politician, to change society in accordance with the law. But at the same time, there is dilemma about democracy and democratic leadership. I said to you at the beginning of my political life, I was dreaming to bring democracy in my country. But sometimes, especially in the modern era, with the impact of the social medias and the new technologies, it's very difficult to be a democratic politician right now. And maybe you are not in a position to deliver what people are expecting from you in the very efficient way, like some other not very democratic politicians, some populists, for example. They are able to deliver more and to make a manipulation with human beings, with the electorate, because they are using mass media in lying them and convincing them in a specific way, and they are perceived as a more efficient and more better politicians than democratic politicians. And this is why I'm sharing only this dilemma with you.
Yeah, well, one thing populists certainly have, they promise more. Whether they deliver more, that's a different story. But it sounded a bit more like, because you say you were coming from a position where you didn't necessarily seek power. So in a sense, you were an accidental president, one can say, in a sense that the circumstances pivoted you to that. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But let me bring in Moussa Mara here as well. Somebody, as you pointed out, a very young man. So you were once prime minister. Who knows? Time will tell whether things can heave you back into that position. But from the experiences you have made, would you subscribe to what Boris Tadic have said up until now? Nothing prepares you for leading a country. And in essence, when you leave is actually when you are ready to lead, because you know all the ins and outs. Is that also compatible with the experience you've had?
I share what Boris said about the ability to deliver what you promised when you are campaigning, and the ability to give services to the people. This is a kind of good leadership. I share that with him. But I have some few differences with him about our experiences. Before being Prime Minister, I was mayor. I started my political career locally to being mayor, and that helped to understand the mindset of the people and to have a social use for power and a social kind to get the power and to deliver service.
So people already perceived you as a
Yes,
leader before you
yes,
became
yes,
prime minister.
Absolutely. This is the difference with Boris. But the main thing is, if you are elected to be member of parliament, to be a member of government, president, of course, you have to try to do your best, and especially on this time with social networks, new technology, people are very, very quick to wait the results. They are not patient. And you have to do your best to try to deliver the service you promised to be elected. This is the first thing. And the second, as he said, we are facing a lot of fake news now and a lot of propaganda from political leaders and from civil society. And as a leader, you need to communicate, not only to act, but to communicate as well. And in your communication, you have to convince your audience, the public, about what you are doing, and you have to fight at the same time the fake news and the disinformation. This is something which is somehow complex to do. Action and now communication. If you want to be understood as a leader, as a politician, communication is at least as important as action, unfortunately. But you have to consider that. This is maybe something I have to add to what Boris said, and I share exactly what he said.
Though communication, of course, in and of itself is not a bad thing. At the end of the day, you're being elected to explain your positions. But Boris, if we're looking at the title again, political leadership in the modern day age. Now, it is very clear that if you want to become a politician in this day and age, you have to endure and accept 24/7 scrutiny. You have to accept criticism, sometimes, unfortunately, also harsh personal attacks. Do you think that also deters a lot of good people, a lot of competent people, a lot of able people who might want to do good as a politician in their country, but otherwise are deterred from the very toxic environment that sometimes politicians find themselves in? Is that compatible with your experience?
Yes, and nowadays when I'm talking with young people, trying to convince them to come to politics, I have to be honest and to say this is very toxic work. And you are going to lose your privacy, you are going to be under light every day and under criticism, and you have to learn to teach yourself how to suffer. And in that respect, I'm just after landing here in Bangladesh, I met one wonderful person here who is helping this organization, and he was waiting on me, and he was asking me some things about my career and my life, and I said to him, and how to mature in a difficult time, especially to be a politician. And I'm always recommending to young politicians to read the poem of Rudyard Kipling, If. Because this poem is teaching people how to survive in a difficult circumstances. But politics mean that, especially in the modern era, I'm talking about social medias, taking into account cancel culture, that your work is going to be destroyed. Not only by your enemies, your rivals, but also by the people that cannot understand politics, matter of politics. And this is big problem. This is big problem. You have to be aware that not many people are understanding politics. Even professors, academicians cannot understand matter of politics. This is why I'm always very much suspicious when I've heard that on the best universities in the world, some people that are coming from philosophy, political science are teaching about politics. Because politics is not that kind of science. Politics is a science, but not political science. Politics is everything. Politics is so complicated. Politics is like flying to the space. You have to understand politics, biology, climate changes, you have to understand security, military, history, everything, and to combine, to make a synergy in your head and to deliver decision. This is extremely complicated, but this is unbelievably interesting.
It's very interesting, very rewarding, I can also imagine, but...
No, I'm sure. I hope that I was encouraging you to enter into the politics.
Well, yeah, that was actually that was a good ad to become a politician more than anything else. No, it is true, of course, Musamara, that as a leader, first and foremost, it's the highest honor I think anyone could carry. You will be in the history books. You will have had the honor of leading your country. But at the same time, as Boris Tadic was saying, you are expected to have an opinion and make decision on a wide range of topics from A to Z, which understandably no human being in this room, on the stage or beyond, would be an expert in. You are very much dependent on good advisors. Let me talk about the pressure of this job. It is often said, I'm sure each politician, you, Boris Tadic, everyone else, goes into office thinking you're going to change the office. But oftentimes, the office ends up changing you. Isn't that the case?
For sure, because the reality is always different from what we expect before coming into office. It depends on the environment you find, the context, the economic situation, political one, and social situation. And you have to adapt yourself to what you find when you come to the office. That's why I joined the Boris position about how interesting is our job. It is sure it is difficult, but it is an honor given by the people to put you on the seats and to lead them. This is honor, and that's why we have not to blame the people, we have not to blame the society for whatever they do against us as a pressure, as a context, as a march and protesting. We have to tackle the problem of the society and why we are elected, and we have not to blame. It is a specific position, it is a positive position, it is a chance given by the others. That's why, on my opinion, I think as a politician, as a leader, elected, prime minister, president, and other top office, top posts, we are lucky. Whatever happened to us, we are lucky. And this luck, we have to use it in order to deliver service, in order to give a chance to others to better their life. As simple as that.
But Boris Tadic, if we're looking at the situation, it seems to me there's a very there's a dilemma, there's a catch-22. On one hand, each and every one of us are looking for aspiring leaders. We want to be inspired, we want to be led, we want to be motivated. But at the same time, we, meaning the citizens, we're extremely harsh in the sense, the way we judge, which leads to politicians who may have come into office with a very inspiring note, but become very predictable because they're playing it safe, and their political statements are scrutinized and controlled by their communication officers to make sure nobody is offended at any given time. And thus, you have uninspiring press conferences, which I, myself, as a journalist, then sit very frustratingly, and I'm looking for that one headline, which, of course, is never given. How do we get out of this? How do we get out of this dilemma and this contradiction where people are looking for courageous, bold leaders, but the minute they become courageous and bold, the outrage turns against them?
Oh, Ali, you are posing the most difficult questions, and I have to be the greatest philosopher in the world to make proper answers. I mean,
you're no longer in office, so you don't have to be diplomatic.
No, I see. This is catch-22, really, catch-22, and I hope that everyone is aware of what it means, catch-22. This is paradoxical moment in politics. You have to come to the power by using your conviction and your skills. Otherwise, you cannot change society. When you are coming to the office to be president, prime minister, immediately you are facing with a problem because people are attacking on you, asking from yourself everything. Because they understood, especially people from your party, they understood if you came to the power, you are coming to that position because of themselves, not because of society. And they are expecting you to deliver. Without their support, without support of your political party, you are going to be in an extremely difficult situation, being totally alone in the wide world. You have to have a kind of protection, your party fellows. But if you are not delivering to them positions to be minister, to be this and that, they are not going to be satisfied. By being very principled, you are losing power within your organization. Maybe you are going to get credit from your society, but this is very temporary, and this is catch-22. If you want to be a successful politician, you have to have a balance. If you are balancing, you are looking very weak. You are not looking very principled and very strong, and people are expecting strong leaders. At the same time, people are expecting intelligent leaders. At the same time, people are expecting honest leaders. At the same time, people are expecting leaders that are not going to manipulate with them, with the economy, with the finance, with everything else. This is why to be really good politician is a very, very specific work, very specific job. But I'm trying to explain what it means. What it means. This is in practical terms. This is why I like to teach people to be politicians, to explain to them where is dangerous, after which angle they can expect a more difficult situation, how to avoid it. This is also very, very specific skill. But what I wanted to say a lot of things because this topic is inspiring me, but we don't have enough time. It's a kind of problematic situation, especially in the modern era. Ali, this is something that I'm asking myself. Journalists. I always consider journalists as a partner in terms of changing society. Without journalists, without public medias, we cannot be good, successful politicians that are serving to our society, because we need a criticism. We need a kind of corrections. We can get corrections not only from ourselves in a good way, but from the journalists. But journalists are also like politicians, like policemen. You have a dirty journalist, you have an honest journalist. You have a dirty policeman, you have an honest. You have a dirty politicians, you have an honest politicians. We are not the same. We are not the same. But all of us are facing with the stereotypes. I mean, majority of people think that all politicians are the same. Do you know, in my country, we have a typical approach to the ladies. All ladies are the same. Ladies are saying every man is the same. This is not the truth. This is simply not, we are looking to each other, but this is not the truth. You have an honest journalist, intelligent journalists that are asking difficult questions. I like those kind of journalists. I like a journalist that are asking me something that I cannot respond easily. This is why I like your questions.
Thank you, Boris, for your honesty also. It's very clear that it's something that you're still internally are grappling with, this dilemma. But Musamara, I think Boris Tadic has touched upon a point. No matter which agenda you come into office, compromises, of course, is one of the key factors and necessities of politics, unless you're an authoritarian regime. But in a democracy, you have to compromise to get things done. Was that a learning process for you?
The key word is the balance. The balance between the willingness of people and the interest of the country. And every time, as a leader, as a politician, even as a leader of political party, we have to try to get the exact balance between both things. What the people face to me needs, want in my political party, in the society, and what is good for the collectivity as a mayor and as a government. If you take, for example, the huge need of change from the youth, specifically from the youth, every time they need huge change, transformation, revolution. And the rules, the functioning of the state, the procedures, the bureaucracy, you have to find the right way between these two things. How to make procedures, organization, state, rules ready for change and delivering services. This is one thing. The second, our capital cities, big cities in our country, they are different from the rural zones. And the risk for the leader is to focus themselves too much on capital cities, on big cities, because of protest, march, social media, and other things, instead of rural zone, zone of production, zone of creation of welfare. And we have to balance how to avoid unpopularity, how to serve people in the cities, and at the same time to make sure that we are not compromising the future of the country.
Right.
The key word is balance.
Yeah, balance. Balance indeed, and of course you pointed out a dilemma that I think most of us are facing, the urban versus the rural, because that brings up an important point, Boris Tadic. When you are in power, you are surrounded 24/7 by a team that sometimes perhaps tells you what you want to hear, maybe shields you from certain things. How difficult is it to be in power, but at the same time stay very much in tune and in touch with the concerns of the average person on the street? Because that is the major blame and accusation that politicians sometimes are facing, isn't it? That they're aloof, they're detached, they no longer know what the concerns, fears, and worries of the average people are. How do you prevent this wall, this invisible wall, from coming up between the leader and the voters?
Okay, without that kind of distance, you cannot function. But at the same time, if your distance is too strong, you are not able to function. This is a paradoxical moment. I mean, I'm not but a really typical politician. I don't know whether I'm psychologist in politics or politician in psychology. But because of that, I was suffering very much. Sometimes I wasn't able to understand how big that distance has to be. Sometimes the people have been approaching easily to me, and this is, in terms of energy, in terms of functioning, in terms of appropriate reaction, unsustainable. I'm talking with you very openly right now, but this is very difficult to explain, for example, election campaign, because people are expecting you to serve to them. But at the same time, people are expecting you to be somehow untouchable and to be kind of representative of the God on the earth. I mean, even in democracy. I remember when I was always in favor of democracy, okay? I'm first democratically elected president in my country. Always in favor of democracy. But I remember when I was coming in a very poor area, a region of my country, and I saw many, many people coming to me. And I remember the young ladies came with the babies, asking me to touch them, only to touch them. And I understood, for me, it was always unacceptable manipulation with the kids in politics. I always considered Adolf Hitler as a dictator and a war criminal who has been touching babies. You remember that kind of photos. That was manipulation with the babies. And I was reserved. But I understood, without doing this in this concrete situation, that woman is going to be afraid and very much disappointed because she's expecting that somehow I'm protecting her baby. I'm not doing that by touching her head, but she considered me as a kind of protector. And I had a dilemma what to do, whether to escape from the situation or to do something which is good for this woman. Very difficult situation. At the same time, you have to explain in the public media that we are not messengers from the sky. We are ordinary people. Politicians are ordinary people with they fear, with problems, and we are really ordinary people. Unfortunately, people are expecting from politicians that they are electing to be something special, which is not possible.
Because they're projecting their own
people are projecting their wishes and the desires in the politicians that are only ordinary people. I'm finishing with it. I do not want to monopolize the situation. Trying to explain to you. I was campaigning in 2008, and the whole world was looking totally different than the world that I was facing with day after elections, because Lehman Brothers crisis started 7 days after my elections in 2008. Whatever we promised to do, what was in accordance with our plan, our visualization, which was in reality, realistic, disappeared overnight.
Great timing.
And I was promising to do this, to build that highways and railways, but after 7 days we didn't have any opportunity to get the money to invest in that. Whether I was lying? No. I was telling really my convictions and true. But many people have been considering me as a liar after what happened. This is how I'm explaining politics.
Sometimes reality just hits you in the face, Musa Mara, and then you just got to take the ball and run with it. But the question I have is, what would the when you got into office, and of course now in hindsight, you know a lot of things that probably the younger Musa Mara going into office would have liked to know. What would you have liked to know before you going into office?
Older than 2014 when I became Prime Minister. I became Prime Minister at 39. And I remain still the youngest Prime Minister of my country. And after some years after leaving office, I think the better knowledge of state, how the state is organized, and how tough it is to change things on procedures, organization, and preparing law, going to the parliament, managing and discussing with member of parliament, and after the law voted, the implementation take a time. Now my knowledge of that is in our context. I don't know exactly if it is the case here in Bangladesh, for example. In our context, the day you decided something, and the day it is effectively implemented, maybe 1 year, 14 months between the two dates. This is something I didn't know when I came to office. And
you expected the process to be quicker, more smoother,
very, very quicker and very faster. And this is something.
Patience. So you need a lot of patience as a leader.
And you have to be patient. You have to try to change things, but you have to be patient because of procedures, because of organization. This is one thing. The second thing, and Boris mentioned it, is the ability of the leader to impact his councillors, his own political party, his leaders, about the rightness of the decision taken. Sometimes if your neighbor, your relatives feel themselves not okay with a decision, not in their interest, they create a lot of difficulties and to stop it, not obviously, but silently, behind the scene. And your ability to know that, to convince them, to give them some assurances about the implementation of the law is something which is important to know when you come to office, because in our countries, faced to security issues, governance issue, especially corruption. If you decided to fight against corruption, you need to be very strong and very lucky. And when you come at 39, young, you are not aware forcibly of that, and sometimes it creates some noises on your leadership.
Yeah, making some trouble, I think, on the front. There are a lot of special interests, of course, that want to steer you into one way or another. We're talking, of course, about political leadership in the modern age, Boris Tadic. If we're looking at the world map, it seems to me that, and it is apparent, I think, to everyone, there seems to be an increased trend of authoritarianism plaguing the world. If we would go through by country, even countries that before used to be or would be considered very solid democracies are now on the verge of tinkering with authoritarianism and becoming less tolerant of criticism and so on and so forth. Why do you think that is? Why do you think in the 21st century, when allegedly all of us have more exposure to information, more exposure to facts, why do you think we're seeing this worrisome trend? Microphone?
Because of human beings. Human beings are very specific. I mean, our brain, our way of thinking, our emotional intelligence is something which is not fitting very well with democratic rules and democratic...
Are you talking about the leaders or the voters?
I'm talking about whole context. Whole context. And I mean, if you're talking about politics and human beings, which is electorate, this is easier to be successful in politics, in getting power, if you are triggering emotions to the people. If you are triggering emotions and that structure of that part of the mental structure, you are going to be more efficient. If you are triggering new thoughts, if you are provoking new
polarizing,
new way of thinking, for example, you are not going to be that successful in political campaign and elections. This is why nationalists and the populists are always having advantage in the race in politics. This is like in athletics. They have a 10 meters or 20 meters better position in a race against someone who is not populist and who is not manipulating with that part of that kind of structure within human mental structure.
Because they appeal to the emotions of the voters.
Exactly. I'm talking about emotions. If you are nationalist in politics, you can easily say they are threatening us. They are against us. They were always threatening us. They were killing us. They are killing us even today. Look, this is controversial. This is something which is paradoxical to say. They are killing us today. This is exactly what my rivals has been saying during campaign against me and against my party during few decades. But this is paradoxical moment. This is out of logic. They cannot kill us if you are talking right now in political campaign. But that is exactly what they've been saying. They are and they are going to kill us in the future. This is manipulation, which is a triggering massive reaction of the electorate, and that electorate is very strong, and many people are deeply convinced that they have to follow that agenda.
And is that regardless of education level? Is that
Sometimes this is depend on education, this is not depend on education. Also, very educated people, I know them. I couldn't imagine that those people, the professors from the university, were so able to be manipulated by such a politicians. This is new era, and why we are living in that era. In my view, I think that we talked last time, Ali, about that. This is oscillatory curve. We are living, I mean, look at the world before Second World War, full of populists and the people that came to the power, even by respecting democratic rules. But after that, they became horrible dictators and the killers, bloody killers, for example, Adolf Hitler.
Using democracy as a means
They've been using democratic rules to come to the power. After that, they expelled from the power all rivals, and doing that not only within whole society, but within the political parties, also manipulating with paramilitary groups, and finally, they were triggering, come on, this is Germany. Germany, with the classic Germany philosopher, fantastic arts, musicians, I mean, one of the best cultural ethnic group ever in the world. They were producing such a bloody politicians. I mean, I'm always laughing when my German friends are making lessons to me. Come on. But we didn't do that in the history.
But why now? Why now again?
Because this is oscillatory curve.
Yeah,
we are right now down. I hope that we are going to be up.
Musamara, why are we living in this stage of increased authoritarianism?
I will give you our own experience in my country and neighboring country in Africa. Now we are living under junta, military junta. They came to the power to 2020. And the different arguments they use were, first, politicians are all dishonest, corrupted. Second, politicians are on the end of Western countries. They are threatening our sovereignty, our independence. They are killing our society, our people, and they are stealing our mineral resources. This is the second argument. The third argument, we only, as a military, we are able to fight for the real independence of our country. We are independent since 1960, but we are not really independent. We are on the hand of France, we are on the hand of US, and we need a real independence, and we are able to do so. And the huge majority of our country are backing them. For sure, it cannot last, because at the same time, the bad behavior, corruption, stealing public money, failing to give services to the people, the same reality are going on at the same time. But it lasts sometimes. It depends on the context, it depends on the countries, it depends on the region. It could last some time, but it will not ever last forever. We, as a politician, I think, we have to be patient, to stay honest, if you are, because some politicians are really dishonest. That is true also. We have to keep honest, we have to keep focus on our program, our conviction, our ideas, and try to convince people slowly by slowly, and count on the time. It will last but it will not last ever. I think this is what we have to do. But it is a reality. This is a reality in our country.
It's a reality that we're seeing globally, unfortunately. Europe, of course, the continent that we stem from, Boris, is not immune from that. We have a few minutes left. I'm sure that this fascinating conversation, these fascinating insights that we've been getting might have triggered a question or two amongst you, especially perhaps amongst the younger generation. If so, please step to the mic and introduce yourself quickly with a brief question. Having this wonderful opportunity of having these two leaders up here, and we have two mics, I see, one on the right, one on the left. Why don't you, and another one, even three. Ziller has taken care of all aisles here, 3 microphones. Perhaps the young lady, perhaps you get started. I will come to you, gentlemen. Introduce yourself quickly and state your question. Thank you. And we're talking about technological advances. Microphones seem to be still a challenge.
My hello to the panel, and advance apologize for if my question takes a little time. You know,
how much time?
Maybe 2 minutes.
Let's make it 1.
Okay. So we used to see like our ancient kings or sultans. They were like they didn't want their throne to be taken by other sultans, or they really wanted their place to take over by their own preferable children, right? So I don't want to sound like controversial, but do you think it is a quality of a modern leader that they should keep a thought in their mind that they need to leave their place for a better leader so they can like become a better leader or do some more progress of their country or their states? Or as our description says, in this session's description, they said it is written in democracy that we deserve leaders that we want, right? So do you think we deserve a leader that is doing all their things and not thinking about the country? Thank you.
Thank you so much. She raises, of course, a very important point, namely the saying that people get the leaders they deserve at the end of the day, and thus are only to be blamed themselves if they are not satisfied by the outcome. Perhaps we can take a note, collect a few questions, and then come back. The gentleman on the right, please.
Thank you. I'm a former professor of international relations at the university here. Mr. President, last evening we sat together and I didn't ask you $1 million question because I simply didn't know that you were the president until at the end. Mr. President, I am extremely curious. I watch a lot of stuff on Hungary being originated from the Huns, and yet the Hungarians pretend they're the purest of the Europeans. Now, you are a neighboring country. Serbians, Hungarians, Austrians seem to have a similar attitude on the question of, being firm in the European Union regarding migrants. You do take a sort of a conservative stand. Now, what I wondered, I very often thought that Serbs are extremely conscious of their identity as Slavs. Now, what really, I want to hear your mind, do you really consider the Hungarians qualified to see themselves as, blue blood Europeans? And do you seem to think that you have a more distinct role to treat them as Asiatics, Asian origin?
That's a very, very specific question, Boris Tadic, to be answered by the former president of Serbia, whether he thinks the Hungarians are the true. Anyway, go ahead. I'll leave that up to you.
Hello, I'm Rezai from ASEAN in Bangladesh. So I have a question to Mr. President and Mr. Prime Minister. As you were in the power, you were on 2 countries. So my question is why the governments, most of the governments can't tolerate criticism. Like right now, if I criticize my government, I could be in a jail or something else. So most of the government is like that right now. So what's your observation? Thank you.
Let's start perhaps in the reverse order, because we've touched upon this, Boris Tadic, about trend of authoritarianism, countries and leaders that do undermine freedom of press, undermine freedom of speech. They don't want to hear the criticism. What advice and answer do you have for this young man?
My position is a little bit specific in that respect, because when I was young and being involved in opposition politics, I was in the jail because of my freedom of speech and my intentions in that time. I was in the jail, not that long, but I was in the jail, and that was my destiny in that time. And I was I've been very close to being in the jail just day before we withdrew Milosevic in that time, because they accused me, and the minimum sentence was 10 years jail and maximum 20 years jail. And only month after that, I became a minister. I had the two options, to go in the jail or to become minister.
From one extreme to another.
I was accused because of political thing, not because of kind of criminal act. But minimum sentence was 10 years, maximum 20 years. I don't have a problem with the criticism. I think without criticism, being on the power, you cannot be successful. I like critics. But this is about the way how your parents are teaching you. They were the biggest, I mean, they criticized me almost every day when I was on the power. This is...
Your parents?
Yeah, my parents. And when they asked my father, what about my leadership, he said only this sentence: he's not bad. He didn't say he's fantastic. He said he's not bad. That was kind of criticism, triggering me to be better. I know that was his approach. And about Hungarians and the identity issue is so sensitive issue. One of the most sensitive issues, which is a trigger in many conflicts all around the world. Big powers are ignoring identity issue. I am insisting on identity issue. Identity issue is very sophisticated. This is about emotions. This is about ourselves. This is our individual and collective identity. My Hungarians are feeling a little bit alone in Europe because they are speaking language that no one is understanding. Their history is they are coming from Asia, something like that. But they are right now Roman Christians or Protestants, and they consider themselves pure Europeans. And now they have a leadership which is which is totally against migrations, even though Hungarians, like all other Europeans, are migrants. But we came many centuries ago. But this is about migrations nowadays. We are from now against migrations. I mean, not we. Some European leaders, especially populists, they are from now against migrations, even though their grandparents came as migrants. This is a specific situation, but okay, we have to understand even that kind of politics.
And Musa Mara, perhaps also your reply to to leaders who are immune or rather intolerant of receiving criticism, of being criticized, whether it's from the press, whether it's from voters. That doesn't seem to be a very sustainable model for any leader, is it?
I disagree a bit with Boris. I think any human being is happy with criticism. All of us critics make us angry. The question is our ability to overcome our anger based to the conviction that critics is a part of democracy, is one principle of democracy. And as a leader, as a society, as a state, all of us, we have to fight to give the freedom of critics in our countries due to these facts. if we need democracy, authentic democracy, genuine democracy, we need to open the critics among the society and to let journalists, opposition, political opposition leaders, political opposition, and civil society to challenge the leaders and to make critics if it is necessary. Otherwise, I think anyone is happy with critics. This is about that. It is a question of principle, democracy principle. And it is exactly the same when the young lady talked about political dynasties. And we have a dynasty and a kingdom, but in some democratic countries, we have a dynasties also. For me, it is not an important question to talk about that specifically. What is important is to settle rules inside the parties, inside the countries, to give chance to the leader who deserve to lead. If the the leader of the party wants to appoint and to help his son as a leader of the party and then the leader of the country, he needs to follow the rules in order to show how his son deserves to be the leader. It is not a question of son and father, it is a question of rules, on my opinion. And we have all to fight for that. Democracy means some rules, some principles, and we have to settle that inside our countries, among our societies, in order to get a real democracy. But at the same time, democracy is never perfect. Nowhere we can have a perfect democracy. It is a procedure, it is a way, it is a running. And every time, every day, we have to improve it and to push up the level in order to get what we want to get.
As being very mindful of the time and being very mindful that this is the last session of the day, I know that most of you have probably have had an overkill of information since the session started at 10 a.m. this morning. So Boris, let's perhaps conclude. I see a lot of young people here in the audience, and they obviously are growing up with their own ideals, with their own wishes, own desires, own blueprint of what makes a good leader. What lesson would you have? What lesson would you impart? What advice would you have for the new generation of leaders? Because you're saying we're right now, regrettably, in a cycle, you're saying, historically speaking, where authoritarianism is on the upswing. You say it's a cycle, so hopefully things will revert back. What do you want them to be mindful of?
This is a young nation, very young nation. I don't know what is average age in Bangladesh, but I'm expecting below the 30, something like the 20 something. In that respect, socially thinking, this is a pressure of young people to take a power, to take more influence. This is normal and this is good. But in politics, it's very important, as Moussa have said, balance. It's be very important if it's going to be kind of buffer zone within generations, and to have a free exchange of thoughts. This is extremely important. Otherwise, this country can be led in a very specific way, not very successful way. And this is why I wanted to share that experience with you. The communication between generations is very important. Monopolizing power by older generation is also very bad. And also I am witnessing that in some countries, new generations, youngsters are coming to the power without real enough experience. This is very important. Second, I wanted to share with you that about politicians. Politicians are very specific people. You can find brilliant people, and you can find very, very ordinary people among the politicians. And I would like to share with you one humoristic experience with the politicians. 2 times. I was, few weeks ago, I was in the United Nations event, side of United Nations in a Harvard Club. We've been together, I mean, 40 former leaders and 10 current leaders. And we've been talking to each other for a few hours, and the temperature was colder and colder. It was approximately 12 degrees. And we were continuing to talk, and we talked about climate changes. In one moment, I was asking to say a few things. I said, okay, maybe we can solve problems with the climate changes, climate warming outside, but let's try to do something in the room where we are existing. And I understood. I was in the room with the 40 current and the former leaders that weren't able to regulate temperature of the room. And all of them are intending to run their countries, but we weren't. This is self-criticism. I reacted after a few hours. We weren't able to regulate temperature of the room. I mean, this is something how I'm criticizing ourselves.
Next time I go to vote, I will make that one of the criteria. I will look for a leader who can regulate the temperature in the room. But your point, of course, Boris, is very well taken in the context. Musamara, also your final words of advice, perhaps to the younger generation who will inevitably will take over at some point.
Yes. The first important thing is being a leader takes time. And my advice to the young today is if you want to run for being the president of your country, please start near your village locally. Start to be a local leader. For me, citizenship is first local citizenship. Try to be a local councillor, local mayor, and even not that, try to be useful to your collectivity at the ground level. And integrate, it takes a time. It is a long journey, a difficult journey. And never give up. You will face to failure, you will face to difficulties. Consider how important you will be for your country, for your people, if you are in the top, and never give up. First, local action, and second, never give up.
And Boris, they say politics is like a drug. Once you've taken it, you can never get off it. Is that correct? Can you confirm that as somebody who's been there? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the view from the top political leadership in the modern age, I think I would speak for all when I say this has been a fascinating conversation. In the previous 60 minutes, we were privileged to hear from two former leaders who led their countries through difficult times, who took the time to be with you today to impart their wisdom, impart their knowledge, and throughout the way, I think we've all picked up interesting nuggets and interesting point of information. As far as political leadership is concerned in the modern age, certainly it's not going to get easier from now on for whoever is leading it in the modern age, in an era where information is 24/7 and oftentimes, unfortunately, sometimes in silos and echo chambers. But here we are. The fight continues for good leadership, and the search, of course, continues for good leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, the former president of Serbia, Boris Tadic, and the former prime minister of Mali, Moussa Mara, this is your applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Requesting all the speakers to come forward for a group photo. To everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. We have arrangements for snacks and coffee outside the ballroom. See you tomorrow morning. Thank you.